Hello, buddy. Welcome back to the Tin Man Score channel. I'm your host, Jeffrey Tin Man Taylor, and today I'm reacting to my third and final Shining Gold Tales video for you guys, and this was titled 3 True Creepy Stalker Horror Stories. So without further ado, I'm going to turn these lights off, move the camera up here for you guys, and let's get this reaction on the road and in the bag, shall we? Okay, here we go.
This happened in January of 2016.
Okay.
I went to the shopping center, which was around a 30-minute walk from my house. I had taken the bus up there, but it only stops at the shopping center once an hour. I would usually take the bus home, but this time the bus wasn't due for another 45 minutes. I had done what I needed to do, and my 10-year-old brother was at home alone. My mom had no problem with me leaving him alone for an hour or two, because he can take care of himself for that amount of time. So I decided to walk back to my house instead of waiting for the bus.
Yeah, I would have been doing that myself, because if someone that I was entrusted to look after was a little bit younger than me, I'd be trying to get back home as quickly as possible, or just bring him with me. But anyway, let's continue with the story, see what happens next.
On the way home, I saw a man, maybe 40 or 45 years old, walking in the opposite direction to me. I was walking south, he was walking north. As he turned the corner to walk towards me, I got the impression that he didn't look right. Probably because as he was walking, he was just staring at me. As he walked past me, I got a sinking feeling, like when you're on a plane and it starts its descent. As I continued the walk, I felt like he was following me, so when I got to the bus stop, I acted like I was checking the bus times, which gave me an excuse to turn around, and once I did, my heart started racing. That guy changed directions as well, and turned 180 degrees to walk the same direction as me. He was walking faster than before, and this freaked me out.
Okay, this guy probably is a psychopath. Oh man, at this point, if you keep turning your head around and he's still right behind you, I'll be trying to run and find a place to hide until he passes by and then get up and go. Because you don't want him knowing where you live at.
I was close to the road that I would usually turn up to get to my street. I took the turn and walked about 25 meters when I heard the crunching of a chip packet on the sidewalk that I knew I had passed. He was still behind me. I decided to cross the road to put more distance between us. From there, I could take the long way home. This longer way had a lot of corners, which would make it harder for that guy to follow me. The street also had a lot of teenagers who were home for summer holidays, so if the guy tried anything, then there would be a lot of people who would likely hear me screaming. You may be wondering why I didn't call the police. Well, I made a big mistake and left my phone at home. Even if I did have it, I probably wouldn't have called for fear of provoking something. I'm about 172 centimeters, and I weigh 64 kilograms. Even though my weight is mostly muscle, I'm not large enough to take on someone who's 2 meters tall and double my weight. The next time I turned around to look behind me, he was still there. That was when I started to make my plan to get back to my house. I turned the next corner and sprinted along the path as quietly as I could. I was on my side of the street by then. If I was going straight home, I would have gone left, but I went straight ahead towards a small park that was just up the street from my house.
Hey, if you even had your phone on you, I don't care if you provoke that guy, but I'll be calling the cops because he seems like he's just getting too close for comfort. And if he keeps on following you, then he's not going to give up so easily. But I'm glad she did all these quick turns just to get away from this dude and hopefully find a place that will lose him.
The reason I did that was because I could go through the park and around to get back to my house. As I was crossing the road to get to the park, I looked back and I saw him jogging up the path that I'd just come from. He saw me and started sprinting towards me. Luckily, I had a 150-meter head start. I ran through the park, up and around to the left. The area around there is like a maze, so this gave me an advantage. Once I was behind the park and out of sight, I continued sprinting for a house that had an old shed in its front yard. The shed was empty, and the door was always open, so I hid in there. I was able to see through a window, and he was looking around for me. He then walked the way that I was planning on going to get back to my house. I was still too scared to leave the shed, so I waited there for 10 minutes before I saw him walking back towards the park on his phone. I heard part of what he was saying on the other end. "Yeah, I lost her, but I think she lives around here. She's crafty, though." After he passed, I waited another 10 minutes before leaving the shed and sprinting towards my house.
Okay, he said that he was probably targeting her, probably to kidnap her for human trafficking, probably. I mean, why else would he say on the phone, I lost her, but she lives around this area, though? If she wasn't so smart enough to do that quick run through the park, she would have been grabbed by now. Probably never seen again.
I called my mom, and she called the police, who in turn called me. I gave a description of the man and refused to leave the house alone for a week. I've never seen him again, and the police report hasn't come up with anything.
I hope they caught that psycho. If not, he's still going to be out there either looking for her or some other innocent girls, or he probably skipped town with whoever he was talking to on the phone. But yeah, you definitely don't want to be walking home alone, that's for sure. Because if somebody turns around and starts following you, then you're in trouble. But I'm just glad that she did the right thing and ran towards the shed that he wouldn't even think about checking and hid there until he was gone and got back to her house quicker. Well, let's get to story number 2.
This happened around 3 years ago. I was a 23-year-old male college student, and I was living in a predominantly Hispanic, low-income neighborhood when this occurred.
Right.
About 5 minutes after my Pizza Hut shift one night, I decided to walk across the street to buy a couple tall boys at my local liquor store. I was excited for the weekend, so I could sleep in the next morning. As the cashier was handing me my bag across the counter, a muffled yet short female scream rang throughout the store from outside. I distinctly remember how pitiful it sounded. The cashier and I made the kind of eye contact where you're both thinking, what happened? After a brief silence, he just shrugged his shoulders and told me to be careful getting home. I nodded my head and started out thanking him over my shoulder. I know it seems like we may have underreacted, but honestly, you hear and see a lot of crazy things living in this city, especially at night. In addition to not wanting to get mixed up in something, you don't just call the police over anything, especially a random scream. Even with that being said, thinking about how the scream sounded gave me a mixture of disgusted anger and cold fear. My heart speeding up at this point, I opened the liquor store door slightly and looked around outside. After hearing and seeing nothing but traffic for 15 seconds, I decided to start walking home, head down, ears and eyes open.
I mean, still, if you don't report a scream noise to the police, then you're never going to know who was screaming and why. I mean, I would have been pulling my phone out right then and there, but I hope this person is quick on their toes and get back to where they live at before they find out who was causing the scream.
But as soon as I rounded the liquor store corner, I was greeted by an obviously intoxicated, but somehow steady, short, stocky man with a scratched up face and really stretched out shirt. I assumed he was one of the few drunks who live in a small but dense patch of forest about 12 feet behind the store, so I completely disregarded him and continued walking. At first, something about his behavior caught my attention. He looked extremely nervous, as if he were up to something. Also, I could hear a faint, almost non-existent gurgle-like sound coming from the trees. Immediately, I began to suspect that he had something to do with the scream I'd heard just minutes before. Upon making eye contact, he quickly caught on that I suspected him. "How are you?" he awkwardly asked me, smiling way too much and motioning for me to follow him into the darkness behind the store. I pretty much told him to screw off and continued walking at a much faster pace, looking behind me every 16 or so steps. I began wondering what the hell that noise was coming from the woods and why the man was acting so shady. Maybe I was overreacting though. Maybe the sound was just an old pipe or drain nearby. Maybe he was really just a drunk and didn't want me to call the cops on him for public intoxication or something. About 5 minutes later, while I was walking down a dark and isolated stretch of road, about half a mile from my apartment, out of nowhere, the man I'd just seen burst out of some shrubbery about 12 feet from me, and he was wielding a large machete. I immediately went into panic mode and threw my beers at him, then began running as fast as my legs would carry me towards my apartment building. I hoped I had enough strength left within me to make it. I then realized that I should have ran back to the store because it was closer. But as I started running, he came from behind, and the rest was instinct. He was initially so close behind me that I could swear I heard the blade cutting the air as he swung at me.
This is why you don't say screw off or make any other insults towards somebody that's drunk, because they'll literally take that as a sign that you're not compliant or you're just cruel and will literally attack you for it. I cannot believe a machete. Lord have mercy. I would definitely be hightailing it back to the apartment, but make sure I find a spot to where I don't lure him to where I live at. Because you definitely don't want him to break it into the apartment complex and try to butcher up everybody else in there.
I honestly expected a machete blow to the neck or head at any second. That's a very unique, very hard state of mind to be in, knowing that you could die at any moment. The worst, most gruesome thoughts of me being murdered began to fill my mind. Would I trip, only to have a defensive arm hacked off right before my eyes? Or would I be halfway decapitated, mid-stride, falling hard and bleeding out as other parts of my body were cut away? Tears filled my eyes when I thought of how my family would feel knowing that I was hacked to death, bleeding out on the side of a dark road alone. I began to scream, half out of desperation, half out of fear. I know it sounds cowardly, but you can't really judge until you're being chased down by someone who literally wants to hack your body apart. I eventually made it home. Some part of me knew I'd lost the guy before I got there, but my fear and adrenaline refused to let me stop running. I collapsed as soon as I made it inside, and tried not to go into cardiac arrest from running so hard. I tried to remember everything I'd learned in the Army about the 2-mile recovery drill. It helped a lot. Anyone who's been in a remotely similar situation can understand why I never called the police. After some much-needed water and heavy breathing, it was 30 minutes before I could even put together a chain of complete rational thoughts, by which time the guy would be long gone. After double-checking all the doors and windows, I fell into a paranoid sleep, gripping a kitchen knife soon after. The next day, I came to find that a younger teenage girl had been killed behind the same store around that time. As far as I know, the guy has never been caught. I'm 120% sure that the scratched face and stretched shirt on the man I'd seen the previous night were remnants of the poor girl's futile attempt to fight off her killer. I also realized that the suspicion he saw on my face was enough for him to want to kill me, since he must have thought that I was a witness or something. The girl had only gone there to buy some orange juice for her mother. The liquor store was the closest carrier of OJ in the area. I can't help but feel kind of guilty, though, and I feel so horrible for the girl's family, especially her mother. If I called the police then and there and went back inside, would he have been caught? I remind myself that things played out the way they did, and that I can't change the past. I can never be 100% sure that he was the killer, but I'm almost certain that he was. Also, who carries around a damn machete? Nevertheless, Michael Myers, machete-wielding killer, let's never, ever meet again.
Oh man, you got that right. Why would somebody that's drunk and wandering around the city like that carry a machete? I mean, I'm surprised nobody didn't call the police on him if he was walking on the street with it, not even thrashing it around in the air. Even though you should have called the cops, then he probably would have been captured, and this poor girl probably would have went back home with the orange juice for her mother. But hopefully the cops do find him. If not, he'll be rotting in hell by the time he dies, because he is one sick individual.
For some reason, I always attract weirdos. My day started off normal enough. My weekend routine went according to plan. Only this day, I met a seemingly nice guy who really seemed to have everything going for him. It was a Saturday afternoon, and I was jogging in the park near my neighborhood. As I came around the bend of a street near my house, there stood a gorgeous man. He looked like he had just stepped out of a GQ magazine. Nice suit and tie, dressed to the nines. He smiled and said hi, then he proceeded to tell me how cute I was and asked for my number. Honestly, I was shocked that such a guy would be interested in me. I was in my yoga tank and shorts, hair tied back, no makeup, and sweaty from the jog. But no alarm bells went off yet. Anyway, I gave him my number and got his, and I went on my way. A few seconds after I got home, my phone went off. It was him texting. I found it odd that he would text me so quickly, but I brushed it off as nerves and maybe sent a few emojis back. I thought nothing else of it for the rest of the day. I turned my cell phone off and went to take a nap. When I woke up, I turned on my phone, and there were countless texts, calls, and voice messages from the guy asking why I didn't answer him. I found it very strange that he was hounding someone that he just met hours earlier.
You see, I would not even give this man my phone number at all, because if you just met him, I wouldn't want to be exchanging phone numbers and try to be friends with him, because if he acts like that, he's not somebody you don't want to run into ever again. He's clearly obsessed.
So I called him, and I told him that if he didn't chill out, then he should just lose my number. He apologized and said it would never happen again. Then he asked me out on a date. Despite his strange behavior so far, I accepted. Fast forward to date night, and I found out a lot about him, like his prestigious educational background and his family's social standing. Let's just say that they were a very prominent group of people. I was intrigued, and everything seemed to be going fine. That is until he started mumbling to himself. At first I thought it was just me overthinking things, but when he started to answer his own questions, I got freaked out. While he continued to mumble to himself, I interjected. "Hey, is there anything you'd like to talk about?" He replied with a firm no. At that moment, I knew this would be our first and last date, and I suddenly understood why a handsome man from a well-to-do family was still single. It was clear that he had mental issues that needed to be addressed by a mental health care professional. I had also decided that I would not be seeing him for any more dates. I thought that would be clear enough to him as well. We ate our dinner. The rest of our date was nothing but silence, and we went our separate ways. A couple weeks went by, and I was relieved that I hadn't been contacted by him. I figured it was obvious that our first date was horrible and unnerving, and that we'd never see each other again. I didn't mean to ghost him or anything, but there was really nothing further to discuss at that point. A couple Saturdays later, I was on my usual jog, and guess who I ran into, this time in workout gear? He was smiling from ear to ear and running towards me. "Hey you," he said with excitement. "Oh, hi, how are you?" I answered uneasily. "Okay, just thinking about our future together," he replied. I was at a loss for words at this point, and it dawned on me that I didn't make my point clear enough.
Apparently not, because if your first date was not so fun or exciting like a normal date would be like, then I wouldn't have not even talked to him ever again. I'll be telling him, you better delete my number right now or I'm going to get the police involved. But he sounds like the type of guy that won't take no for an answer.
So I said, "Look, you're a nice guy, but I don't think you're the guy for me. I wish you the best in life. Good luck." He said he understood and kept on with his run, and I proceeded to head home. I truly thought that was the end of it, But after another week had passed, he began sending me texts again. He was begging and pleading for another date because he knew I was the one, and he'd surely die without me. I didn't answer. I just blocked his number. I was over this nonsense. The next week, my family and I went on our annual camping trip out of state. He started calling me from random numbers, saying that he knew where I was and that he was watching me. Initially, I shrugged it off, but when he told me what state I was in with my family, I freaked out. He told me that anything could happen to me or my family because of how powerful and connected his family was and how they could make people disappear. I told him to F off and leave me alone, but it didn't work. The harassment continued off and on for another month. During that time, whenever I'd leave my house to go to work, run errands, or just get out, I would notice his car parked across the street from my house. I never told him where I lived, and we'd only been on the one date. I was very stressed out at that time, barely sleeping, because every little sound I would hear in the night seemed like him trying to break in. I tried to remain vigilant and undaunted in his presence, because I didn't want him to think that I was afraid of him or his tactics. He knew everything about me, things we had never discussed, and continued to threaten bodily harm if he didn't get his way. I stayed steadfast, but finally decided to tell my best friend, who's in the military and works in law enforcement, about the ordeal, just to see if I could get some insight on my legal options and see if I could get help. My best friend asked me for his name, but I only knew his first name, so we traced him by the phone numbers he'd been using, many of which were registered to him or his close family members. I don't know what my best friend did or said, but I haven't had any more issues with him since. I'm grateful he didn't follow through with his threats to harm me, and I learned my lesson. Just because someone's drop dead gorgeous doesn't mean that they can't be crazy.
Thank God she had a friend that was ex-military and in law enforcement to handle this situation, because if she didn't, she would have been worrying that he would keep on texting or bothering the crap out of her. But apparently her friend talked some sense into that dude, maybe saying like, you keep harassing her, your family won't be able to get you out of this jam. Something like that. I don't know. But at least you don't have to deal with him no more. Hope you all enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on post notifications for more Shiny Gold Tails reactions like this. This has been another successful installment of the Tin Man Score channel. I'm your host, Jeffrey Tin Man Taylor, and that's a wrap. Have a nice day, y'all.